It's the last volume of the Cinema Chronicles of 2024 right here on the newly established Nashville Movie Dispatch. I'm your host, Brandon Vick. I'm a member of the Music City Film Critics Association and the Southeastern Film Critics Association. And as you may recall, it all started as being this resident film critic of the Sobros Network. The year is almost over, and I've got 4 very different movies to talk about for you guys. But Christmas is almost here. I love the season. I've managed to watch some Christmas movies, but I've been pretty swamped with all kinds of different screeners and screenings, which I'm not complaining. I actually just wrapped up this time last week submitted my picks for the Southeastern Film Critics best of 2024. That came out Monday morning. Anora was our best film of the year, and I'm really happy with that pick. We had a lot of good ones in there, from the performances and documentary and animated. But, let's see, what's today? The 20th. So here, relatively soon, we'll start voting at Music City Film Critics Association and have that out by early next year. And then I, of course, in January, have my personal best ofs, worst ofs. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to get them all together, trying to watch all that I can watch, and I've done a pretty good job. According to my letterbox, it's been over 300 movies this year. So I'm very, very proud of it, and I think I've only have 4, 4.5, and 5 stars have only been given to 36 films out of over 300. I still have a few more to go, but I think I've kind of seen the most kind of buzzworthy, critically praised ones. One of them being one that I'm going to talk about today. So yeah, I mean, I think that's all that's really from November, December. That's all that's really happened. And in case you haven't heard, I got a book. I'm not going to do a whole commercial thing for you, but Stoney and I, this was Stoney's idea. I'm just surprised we just now thought of it, but yeah, it's the movie annual 2024. Everything that we've done this year is on a page. There's also some exclusive stuff in there. We got stuff from our buddy Brett. We got stuff from Sean from 615 Film. So if you haven't, check it out. You can get it on Amazon for like $8. Still time to get it and surprise your loved one. And when they ask what it is, just start reading stuff to them, in case they have no idea who the hell we are. So, but I hope everybody has had a wonderful holiday season. I'm excited. It's been it's always busy, but yeah, it's been a pretty good 2024. We'll see what 2025 brings. But let's get into it. Like I said, I've got 4 really different movies for you to wrap up the year. So let's start with Amy Adams being a bitch. Now, listen, let me explain before you start getting mad at me, because I love Amy Adams. But the movie is called Nightbitch, and it is about, per IMDb, a woman who is thrown into the stay-at-home routine of raising a toddler in the suburbs, slowly embraces the feral power deeply rooted in motherhood as she becomes increasingly aware of the bizarre and undeniable signs that she may be turning into a dog. Now, this is directed by Morel Heller, who also wrote it, and I know her from Can You Ever Forgive Me, the Melissa McCarthy, Richard E. Grant film that was really good, and both of them ended up getting nominated. And but this is actually based on a novel, a 2021 novel by Rachel Yoder. And Nightbitch really is, I mean, the themes of it deal with the sacrifice that a mother makes, but also how she loses herself as she becomes a mother. It's referenced at least once, maybe more, about kind of the woman's death when she gives birth to the child, which might seem like a bleak way of looking at it, but it is what I believe is true because I have a son, and my wife, I think, has certainly experienced this, and she watched this with me, and there's a lot that she obviously could relate to, but even some that I could as well. But I think when your child comes into this world, you're not the same. You're not the same person. And I can't imagine, I feel that way. So I can't even imagine what my wife feels that way. But that is, I feel like this movie has to be relatable to all mothers. Like I said, the one that's living in my house, certainly relevant. I got some looks as certain things were, while certain scenes were happening. Like I said, it was very relatable. And so some stuff we had gone through, we currently are going through. And it, so in that sense, I think the film definitely will resonate if you're in this period of life. But I do think, I like that Heller's vision seeks to redefine motherhood and what comes with it. She's sort of speaking the unspoken out loud and embracing it. If it comes off bitchy, then, hey, so be it. Her approach is very direct, but I think it is rather too on the nose. But nevertheless, it's commendable in her attempt to tackle how being a mother changes you and how there's a supposed right way to feel about motherhood, which is, I think I can speak for, I feel like I'm on a platform where I can speak for all mothers being a man and saying that we know that that's bullshit. There is no wrong way to feel about being a mom, and that's sort of the point here that the film makes. Becoming a mother is a lot of things, and they ain't all pretty. However, even when the film shows some teeth, it feels like a fake kind of ferociousness. Before we get to Amy Adams, who is stellar in this, I would like to give some praise to Scoot McNairy. Man, he is a fantastic just working actor. I will always remember him in Killing Them Softly, an underrated Brad Pitt movie that I love. But he's been in a ton of things. He's in the new Bob Dylan movie that's going to be coming out here soon, A Complete Unknown. But I thought he was excellent as the father/husband who is clueless, but also confused, but is somewhat relatable for us men. I think reading a woman's mind, or when she says it's okay, you think everything is actually okay. We've all been there as men, and we're fools. We're fools for thinking it. But he does a great job, and I like that he kind of represents this other side where he's not the villain at all, but it's sort of not understanding what all that the woman you're with is going through and where she's at physically and mentally. And I personally understood that. The confusion, the cluelessness, the wanting to help, but you don't know how to help. I get it. Now, Amy Adams, she's had a rough couple of years with forgotten roles in movies that I think failed her in some form or fashion. Whether it's the story, the direction, the script. I'm talking Hillbilly Elegy, The Disappointing Disenchanted, The Dear Evan Hansen, The Woman in the Window. But her performances are rarely the issue. And this one here in Nightbitch is a fearless one. And a role that could easily have been ridiculed and laughed at is grounded in honest feelings of coming to grips with the life you have and the one that feels all but lost forever. Adams is... I'm going to read my Letterboxd review that I posted on there. You can find me at Sir Brandon. But Adams is daring and dedicated as a woman becoming wild and free, and Heller's darkly comedic adaptation of what motherhood truly is, growling about the side filled with anger and resentment that's rarely talked about. The assumptions, pressures, and depreciation that's handed to a woman once they've created life is absolutely ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as having her transform into a dog to address these issues. But Heller and team neuter their narrative by not digging more into why and how this happens while abandoning the one intriguing component of such a unique mama metamorphosis. The film ends up choosing conventionality with a bit of bark, but no bite. Now, I realize how some may hear what I'm saying and say, yeah, but you're a dude. A film like this with such a strong female perspective, a review from a woman would mean much more. Well, let me tell you, I agree. So I decided to go looking for reviews only written by women, and because I think that that perspective is something I'll never have. But I did find one, and I felt reassured because I absolutely agree with her thoughts on what Nightbitch strives to be, but also what it actually is. So this is a review from Paste Magazine. It's a review. Instead of committing, Nightbitch just chases its tail. And it's by Nadira Begum, Begum. And she says, the film is constantly hinting towards something deeper, something weirder. But it never quite gets there. There is exactly one scene that verges on body horror. But the film otherwise plays it safe when it comes to the potential for strangeness in the story. The metaphor of the animal transformation lends itself to discussions about postpartum psychosis or declining mental health, and one can't help but wonder what the film could have been if Heller dug deeper into these themes. Instead, she avoids leaning into the kind of magical realism that would have allowed her film to be something of interest, and as a result, the film takes a cursory approach to the trappings of motherhood, presuming, as a man might, that a mother's anger is simply limited to the domestic and can be cured by an apology. In this way, Nightbitch feels more like a basic guidebook for new fathers than it does a satisfying exploration of motherhood for women. Mother feels like an outsider's perception of what it means to be a mother rather than a genuine insight into the struggle to balance motherhood with a career. The film strives towards something profound but falls flat in its reluctance to embrace the surrealism of its plot. Perhaps the film works better just as a run-of-the-mill horror comedy about a woman who regrets sacrificing her career to start a family, but as a so-called revolutionary take on motherhood, Nightbitch is stagnant and spends too much time chasing its own tail to an unsatisfying conclusion. So I'm giving Nightbitch 2.5 out of 5 stars. And coming up next, it's Aaron Taylor Johnson trading in his kick-ass mask for a big old furry leather coat in Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter was supposed to come out last year, and then I think was supposed to come out in October of this year. Then earlier this year, it got pushed back. Or I'm sorry, it did get pushed back, but to December. I can't think of a better Christmas movie than Kraven the Hunter. And I'm just kidding. Let's start with, in case you're not familiar, Per Rotten Tomatoes, Aaron Taylor Johnson plays Kraven, a man whose complex relationship with his ruthless gangster father, Nikolai Kravinoff, played by the wonderful, incomparable Russell Crowe, starts him down a path of vengeance with brutal consequences, motivating him to become not only the greatest hunter in the world, but also one of its most feared. So, let's get down to, first of all, I don't think it's at 15% rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's over 100 reviews. Sony just can't get their shit together. This is one of the ones that I thought had a chance to actually be kind of cool. I always liked the character Kraven the Hunter. I remember having his old action figure. I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson is perfect. But the problem isn't really, as far as acting goes, let's start there. Aaron Taylor Johnson looks the part, but he does kind of play him as like this cool guy. And I think we're missing the part where like he basically grew up in the wilderness. And the fact that he's so like level-headed, I'm not quite sure if I believe that. I think it's kind of weird that we just assume that he would be like a normal dude. But that's actually the least of our problems. Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think, makes a great Kraven and a not so great movie. Russell Crowe, we mentioned he plays his father. Russell Crowe is just here to have a good time. He has his accent. Everybody, I think, has an accent in this. Whether it's good or not, I don't know. I honestly, they could just talk in regular English. If the story and other stuff was better, I wouldn't care. But some of it, yes, is distracting. Russell Crowe is Russell Crowe. Take it or leave it. I like the guy. I think anything he is in, he makes it better. But I also feel like there have been quite a few times here recently, in the past probably few years, that I think it's just kind of easy. It's easy to do. It's easy, let me dress up as this, and I'll have an accent, and I'll be this big burly guy, and, and listen, if he can do what he wants. He's never the problem. Alessandro Nivola, he plays Rhino. He's kind of the main big villain. I really liked him in this. If anybody understands maybe what kind of movie they're in, it's him. I liked kind of his story. I liked how he can become Rhino and kind of the story behind that. He's probably the most interesting. You would think Kraven would be, since this is his movie, but I would disagree. Ariana DeBose, or DeBose, she is an Academy Award winner. She won for Best Supporting Actress in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. However, if you thought Amy Adams had a rough couple years, I'm not really sure what has happened. And I say this because she was in House of Spoils. That was a straight-to Prime Video horror movie that came out in October. It's forgettable. It's not very good. She was in Argyle, Matthew Vaughn's movie, that failed to impress, I think, audiences, critics, everybody involved. Now, I will say, I rather enjoyed Wish, which was Disney's 100th animated feature. However, apparently it was not well received, and it's one of the lowest grossing Disney animated movies, and she was the main voice. But I don't blame her for that one. I liked that one. I thought she was great in it. But then we go to ISS, which is a sci-fi movie that came out last year. I don't think anyone saw. And That's it. So from her Academy Award-winning performance to this, it's been rough. And there are times when she plays Calypso. By the time her and Kraven are talking, and even like how they meet, it's all just very weird, and it almost seems like maybe they're rehearsing and someone just thought they would just film that and thought, here, let's just do this. Some of the delivery, and it's not just her, but there are some lines that are delivered as if like they could care less what is happening in this scene, what's going to happen in the next scene. It's I just don't know how you can get this kind of cast and get this so much like lifeless performances where, I mean, you talk about just showing up, saying a line and leaving. It's painfully obvious that some people truly felt this, and there was no hiding it. There's also Fred, I hope I'm saying this, Heschinger. He was recently as one of the emperors in Gladiator 2. I actually thought he did a nice job in this one. He plays Kraven's half-brother, which if you know anything in the comic books, he becomes Chameleon. And, but that, this isn't really a spoiler. Nothing really gets going on that until the end, and by then they're just setting the stage for something that what now appears that will never happen. And then there's also Christopher Abbott, who I really have enjoyed and here lately, and he's actually going to be I think he is the Wolfman in the new Wolfman movie that comes out next month, but he plays the Foreigner. And I don't know I think he sounds familiar, but I had no idea what he did, and he's kind of cool, but he also it's also pretty forgettable. I say about capturing where some stuff felt like rehearsal. I got to say, I did not realize J.C. Chander was the director in this, and if you're wondering who that is, his other credits are movies that are actually really well done, but A Most Violent Year with Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, Margin Call, All Is Lost, basically the one-man show featuring the legendary Robert Redford. So I'm not really sure how he got into this, but yeah, it doesn't work. I mentioned the dialogue. I mean, I think in all of these, some of it is more painful than others, and I feel like sometimes it's so bad that then other scenes, they look like a masterpiece because they just gave you a lot of crap in the 10 minutes ago. And maybe that's the plan. This probably should come as no surprise. I feel like this has always been an issue, more so not just a Sony issue, but just an issue in all comic book stuff. But there's some awful CGI in this. When it comes to the animals, especially, it's as clear as day, and I get it. I know that he's not just like fighting a lion, a real lion, but we could at least try to make an attempt at putting some money behind it to make it look somewhat real. I mean, look at these Lion King movies. They look like, they look as real as can be. Why can't they just ask Barry Jenkins, who just did Mufasa, a movie that came out today? Why couldn't they copy and paste Mufasa from the computer and put it on theirs? It doesn't make any sense. The one thing that actually works in Kraven the Hunter's favor is, of the Sony-verse Spider-Man movies, this is the only one that's rated R. And I like that it's rated R. There's some killings, there's some blood, there's some violence, and it's nice. It's nice to see. They're cussing, they're saying the F word. I kind of feel like for a character like Kraven the Hunter, it needed to be rated R, so that does work in its favor. It does give it a little bit of oomph to it when there are action sequences. There's not that many of them, and none of them are really that impressive, but at least when you do get some, you're getting some slashing and dashing, and Kraven bites a dude's nose off. So, you got some fun stuff like that. Overall, it is a mess, and no matter how much you delay something, it just seems to never matter. You should just release it when you initially planned, because it doesn't do anything. Doesn't make the movie any better. So there were reports coming out right before this was released back last week that apparently this is the end of Sony's Spider-Verse, that, mind you, never had Spider-Man in it, just as villains. But there's Venom, there's Venom Let There Be Carnage, and then, of course, this past October was the finale of Venom Last Dance. There's Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven. I don't think any of these really hit the mark, except probably the first Venom. There was really something, you could tell they had something with that one, but with each Venom movie, it kind of dropped off. From Morbius, Madam Web, Venom, all of them, their casting has been fantastic. These people can play these characters, but they're surrounded by so much awfulness that it just completely ruins it. It's pretty embarrassing when you look at all that Sony didn't accomplish, but had every opportunity to do so. It's just a shame. I think we could have thrown in a Spider-Man here or there, but I think there's not this balance of this action comedy stuff. They never found that formula. Like I said, Venom was the closest it ever got, and that was really just, honestly, that was lightning in a bottle for them, because it was never recaptured, not even close. So, Kraven the Hunter gets 2 out of 5 VixFlix rating. And coming up next, for those of you that loved Eyes Wide Shut, Nicole Kidman made a sequel. Yay. Nicole Kidman is back being very sexual. I hope that was a good tease for anybody who wants to see that movie. Per IMDb, a high-powered CEO puts her career and family on the line when she begins a torrid affair with her much younger intern. Excuse me. Written and directed by Helena Regine. She directed Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This seductive, sexy, and provocative tale is certainly about power, dominance, and desire. But that's just surface-level stuff. Underneath is something more fascinating and compelling. A super successful woman in her 50s finding her sexual freedom without shame. A coming-out party of sorts where all of her fantasies become reality. Nicole Kidman is riveting, delivering a raw, complicated, and very vulnerable performance. This is per The Hollywood Reporter. Nicole Kidman exposed the inexhaustible actress fronting 6 major projects this year opens up about her startling hypersexual role in Babygirl, stating, "This is a place that I haven't been." As part of the interview for this piece, she's asked, "You described this movie to me as a calling. What was the calling?" Nicole Kidman says, "A lot of times women are discarded at a certain period of their career as a sexual being. So it's really beautiful to be seen in this way. From the minute I read it, I was like, yeah, this is a voice I haven't seen. This is a place that I haven't been. I don't think audiences have been. My character has reached a stage where she's got all this power, but she's not sure who she is, what she wants, what she desires, even though she seems to have it all. And I think that's really relatable. There are many women who are going, well, I've done this, I've got children, I've got this husband, And what do I actually want? Who am I, and what are my desires? Do I have to pretend to be something else for people to love me? I think it's very releasing, this film. I hope it is. I've had some people say it's the most disturbing film they've ever seen, which I'm like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Kidman puts, without a doubt, Kidman puts every range of emotion on screen as Romy. She risked it all by letting her freak flag fly in the midst of losing control, facing humiliation, and committing infidelity. The chemistry she has with Harris Dickinson, another great young actor. He was in The Iron Claw last year. He was in The Triangle of Sadness. The chemistry she shares with him is sweltering. Watching the dynamics change between them takes us to some interesting places story-wise, though not always surprising. I also found Antonio Banderas, who plays Nicole Kidman's husband, to be sensational, especially toward the end. He's the husband who is completely blindsided, and when the realization hits him like a ton of bricks, we definitely feel his hurt. There's no denying the director, Regine's erotic thriller, is absorbing and layered. However, it does seem to play it rather safe by the end, it's disappointing in a sense. And it's because she's really going for something that we, the audience, hardly ever get exposed to. But Babygirl puts a stop to its own audacity with the film's third act. It lets itself off the hook in that way. Even so, Kidman is stunning, and the men ain't too bad either. The raunchiness of it all is a bit overhyped, yet it's still pretty steamy. Don't go see it with your mother, or you'll feel like I did after I took my mom for Mother's Day to see Unfaithful. If anyone's ever seen that hot movie with Richard Gere and Diane Keaton, then you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen it, then you know how awkward that could be. I will say, I know that you are supposed to go with the film and the story, and it's not that the performances aren't believable, but I just can't fathom a world where Nicole Kidman or anyone, man or woman, isn't satisfied with Antonio Banderas. I'm gonna throw that out there. And as I mentioned at the top of this about a sequel to Eyes Wide Shut, for those of you like Stoney who love that film, this is sort of like a sequel to that. It's kinky pleasure, and it's Christmas time. I saw a tweet about and I thought it was quite fitting from David Elkerick. He is he's basically the big critic on IndieWire. He tweeted after he saw it back in October. He said, "Babygirl's the closest thing we'll ever get to an Eyes Wide Shut sequel, and I loved it. Kidman and Dickinson are both outstanding. So rare and fun to see a movie where the characters genuinely seem unsure what they're capable of." And that's what is really great about Babygirl. They're unsure of what they are capable of doing, constantly pushing to see what they can get away with, consequences be damned. Nicole Kidman, again, the cast is great, but Nicole Kidman does deliver one of the best performances of 2024. Babygirl's getting a VixFlix rating of 3.5 out of 5. Comes out on Christmas. Take the whole family. Enjoy it. And coming up next, Adrian Brody is back and better than ever. A film called The Brutalist opens up today in limited release, and I think it's a wider release at the beginning of next year. Per Rotten Tomatoes, escaping post-war Europe visionary architect Laszlo Toth, played by Adrian Brody, arrives in America to rebuild his life, his work, and his marriage to his wife after being forced apart during wartime by shifting borders and regimes. On his own in a strange new country, Lazio settles in Pennsylvania, where the wealthy and prominent industrialist Harrison Lee Van Buren, played by the wonderful Guy Pearce, recognizes his talent for building, but power and legacy come at a heavy cost. This sprawling epic that's also an intimate immigrant story presents how the American dream can be hopeful and horrifying, and how the past will always affect the present. It's the destination, not the journey. Co-written and directed by Brady Corbet, the film is masterful practically on every level. His direction is absolutely ambitious but mesmerizing. We have the stunning score by Daniel Blumberg, Lowell Crawley's breathtaking cinematography. Simply put, American films are rarely made like this anymore. And to expand, if I may, a little bit on the cinematography, per IndieWire, so why the Brutalist revived Alfred Hitchcock's favorite format and why you should see the movie in 70mm to appreciate it. It says, now as exhibitors struggle with the rise of streaming and declining theater attendance, filmmaker Brady Corbet has revived the greatest of all widescreen formats and given today's audiences the same reason to get off their couches that Alfred Hitchcock, Michael Curtiz, and other premier directors of their era gave in the 1950s. Corbet opted to shoot The Brutalist in VistaVision, a process Paramount Pictures introduced in 1954 with the release of Curtiz's White Christmas. The format's run was brief but glorious. It essentially fell out of regular use after Marlon Brando's One-Eyed Jacks in 1961. But before that, it was employed on several of Alfred Hitchcock's best films, including Vertigo and North by Northwest, as well as John Ford's The Searchers and Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments, and a whole slew of visually spectacular Jerry Lewis comedies. What made VistaVision special compared to rival formats like CinemaScope was its larger negative, around twice the size of a typical 35mm film frame, as the film was run through the camera horizontally rather than vertically. As Margaret Bod, who works with Martin Scorsese's Film Foundation, told IndieWire, with CineScope, you have a 4-perf negative. VistaVision is 8-perf, so you're doubling the size of the image. It just has a superior image quality. In spite of that superior quality, VistaVision ultimately became more or less obsolete for feature film production, though it continued to be used extensively for special effects work. This is how it applies with The Brutalist. Corbet and cinematographer Crawley brought VistaVision back into use for The Brutalist in what is much more than a mere case of celluloid fetishism. Aside from the increased detail provided by the larger negative, VistaVision perfectly expresses the philosophical ideas at the core of The Brutalist, particularly the juxtaposition between minimalism and maximalism that characterizes both the architecture created by the title character and the style of the film itself. As Crawley told IndieWire, one key advantage of VistaVision was that its wider field of view meant the filmmakers could capture expansive architecture without resorting to distorting wide-angle lenses. The real value of VistaVision for Crawley, however, lies in that ability to be both minimalist and maximalist in the same movie. We use it not only for capturing aspects of the architecture and landscape, but you can also shoot the most beautiful portraits on the format. Some of the, if not the best cinematography of not just 2024, but of the past few years, the past decade. Also, don't be frightened by the runtime. It is about 3.5 hours, but it is split into 3 parts, including a nice little 15-minute intermission. It's kind of part 1, and the way part 1 ends and goes into part 2 is really well done. I know a lot of people, I think, kind of feel like the first part's better than the second part. And I get that, and I would almost agree with that. But then there's the epilogue, which makes the third and final part. And it adds so much weight and emotion to the second part that it's really tough to say. I mean, obviously it is one film, but that second part does seem to get does seem to really kind of change its face in a way from what you saw in the first part. But and it ends up sprawling between in the 50s, 60s, and then I think the epilogue happens in 1980. But as one entire film, it is spectacular. Adrian Brody, already mentioned, in case you forgot, Brody can act his ass off. It's The Pianist, which he won the Oscar for, but better. His portrayal is deeply layered as a Hungarian architect whose buildings will stand the test of time, but not without suffering and sacrifice. It's fucking brutal. And I talked about Guy Pearce. He's one of the most underrated actors, I'm going to say, ever. The man was in LA Confidential, Memento, Lawless, The Rover. If or when he gets nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this film, it should not be his first Oscar nomination, but it will be. As Harrison Van Buren, he's a charming capitalist, but there's always something truly menacing that you feel is just below the surface, ready to come out and roar. And roar he does. This is actually he's very popular. So this is per the review of IndieWire by David Elric. Warped by the value system of a country where people are taught to deserve whatever they can take, Van Buren figures that he can lay claim to toss singular talent. He reasons that immigrant labor should be cheap and grateful, and so, in exchange for a pittance of a salary and a place to live, he offers Toth the commission of a lifetime. Ostensibly a tribute to Van Buren's late mother, but really a monument to himself, the Institute will be a sprawling library, civic center, church, whatever on a hill that people will be able to see for miles in every direction. Toth's style is less important to Van Buren than his vulnerability. It's easy for a billionaire to keep an unsettled immigrant under his thumb and to erase them from the narrative if they ever threaten to make it about themselves. That, I think, perfectly sums up what essentially becomes this complex relationship between Toth and Van Buren. The two men that Brody and Pierce play, they want the same thing, but for two totally different reasons. And as for the actors, this may be their finest work yet. It's phenomenal stuff. Felicity Jones is as good as well. Her role as Lazo's wife is somewhat one note, as she's mainly there to kind of be this rational voice in Lazo's ear. But The Brutalist is complex, it's expansive, and it's extraordinary. And while it takes place mostly from the mid-40s to 1960, make no mistake, what it is and the tale it tells is as timeless and timely as ever. I wanted to, and this is, I must say, some of the best acting of the year, one of the best films of the year. This is definitely in my top 3, top 5. It really should be seen in theaters. I talked about the VistaVision. I mean, it's really the scope and the scale and the beauty that went into this should be seen in the cinema, not at home. But as of per RogerEbert.com and their list of the best films of 2024, The Brutalist was voted number 1. And critic Robert Daniels wrote about it. And I want to end with this because I really found this quite beautiful. He writes, I often find my faith in contemporary American filmmaking shaken. Our potential for spontaneity, daring, and imagination are dulled by underuse. The curiosity and the complexities of the human experience, building and breaking reality, pulsating with vitality and stretching the limits of the heart, feels lacking. When I'm at my most low, I think the death knell of a certain kind of filmmaking has finished ringing. But then a towering epic like The Brutalist appears. This is a film whose thematic heft recalls Concrete. It stands as an anti-capitalist work, an endorsement of the creative soul, and yes, a commentary on this country's role in stoking modern Zionism. Its orchestral score is steady and booming. Its performances, from a tragic Brody to a sinister Pierce, are parables of a country. The sprawling structure is as elemental to cinema's ability to span and inhabit every walk of life as the dust is to the earth. The Brutalist isn't just the epic of 2024. It restores hope in American movie making. The Brutalist gets a VixFlix rating of 4.5 out of 5, one of the absolute best of the year. And I do believe this is something that, as years pass, this will be discussed forever. There's always discussions about what this epic is about, what it depicts, and how it may be from, 30 years ago, 40, 50, 60 years ago, but also how it feels like it's right here, it's right now.
Hey, can I chime in for a second?
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm listening to you talk about this movie. This is Stoney, by the way, for everybody listening.
Oh, hey.
Producing the show here. What is keeping it from being a 5 out of 5? Because I would have sworn with every penny that I have in my wallet, I would have bet all my money that you were about to give this thing a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I think it's just the overall, the only 5 out of 5 I've given this year is for Doom Part 2. And Anora and The Brutalist have become very close. And I'll be honest with you, as of last week, I wrestled with giving another half star to both of them, to where there were 3 5-star movies. I think there's just something where it's the overall enjoyment of a film. The Brutalist is a tough one, but I know that it's just this just isn't made. I know one of the things when we got out of the press screening, was rarely do American filmmakers make movies like this. And so I think it just kind of comes down to where I think I enjoyed the sci-fi epic of Doom Part 2 more, just based off entertainment. But The Brutalist is a film that must exist, and what Robert Daniels was pointing to, of it's almost like, yes, how great it is. And like I said, not everything is exceptional, but there's so much to chew on that I can't knock it for, because it's, well, where's the humor at? They didn't have anything fun. So, to me, really, anything that gets 4 stars or more is pretty damn good. And listen, I don't want people to think, by the time my list comes out next month, I might have 3 5-star movies. But there's just something that kind of keeps me, because I feel like I have to be so sure when I give 5 out of 5. But I have a feeling, just like I do when I had Babel as my number 1 film and The Departed was number 2, I may have my regrets, and I may go back on Letterboxd one day and say, you know what? This was certainly a 5 out of 5. What was I thinking in 2024? Does that help? Does that help? It's one of the best, really, top three films of 2024. And I do think as the years go on, I think this will be one of the ones that will certainly be remembered and discussed and studied. I really do. And especially it coming out during this time. It says a lot. And but thank you for your question. But that's it. That is the last. That makes, what is this, volume 24 of the Cinema Chronicles right here on the Nashville Movie Dispatch. Again, I'm your host, Brandon Vick. Follow me on Letterboxd at Sir Brandon. I'm on Twitter at Sir Brandon V. And be sure to check out all of our work for Nashville Movie Dispatch on Substack and search for Nashville Movie Dispatch wherever you get your podcasts. And until next year, just go see a damn movie. Oh.